Hello, romance lovers. Today I have a story for you called I'll Do That Wedding in This Life. Don't forget to support this video with a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. Thank you for watching. Night. Full moon. A big mansion. A guy with long blonde hair gently took the girl by the chin, and this man is Konstantin Kremo, the head of the family of the same name, one of the four great ducal families. He is a descendant of this lady is Saina Dubov. She grew up in a typical aristocratic family, similar to many others. Her father always treasured her as an only daughter. One day, when Sina was in the garden, her younger twin brother Yuri came up to her. He asked, "Is she reading books in an ancient language again, which give her a headache?" "Well, Sina sits at home and reads books. Does she even go outside?" The girl was a little surprised, and her brother seemed to be better in this regard. In her past life, the girl had a family that loved her unconditionally. Sina wanted for nothing, but then her debut failed because of a night she can't even remember. The family's honor was trampled because of the lady herself. To correct the problem, she had no choice but to marry the man she had spent the night with. The moon was shining into the dark room. Sina was sitting on the floor and listening to her husband. He was indignant. Does she think she has the right to express her dissatisfaction? This man is George Hollander. After her wedding with him, the girl's life turned into a series of failures. A wedding that turned into hell. Left alone, Sina shouted at the door, "Is anyone outside?" She was cold. Who would light the fireplace? Sina was lying on her bed and needed a doctor. Anyone. She would die alone with Yuri does not consider it important at the moment. He wonders why his sister did not tell him about her deteriorating health. She should have sent them a message right away. Sina apologized. If she knew that everything would be so bad, she would have said it right away. Sina woke up in a bright bedroom surrounded by maids and Brother Sage. He was glad that the lady had regained consciousness. He asked to call them. She looked out the window. Bright and pleasant weather. But why did the season change so much? The father ran and shouted. According to him, Sina had just come to her senses. They wondered how the girl was feeling. Was she in pain? The lady replied, everything was fine. She had caused them enough. After the wedding, Sina did not communicate with anyone. She cut off almost all ties. Her brother said that she could not imagine how she and her father. She lay in a coma for a whole year. The girl thought that she was now 30 years old, but her relatives assured her that she was 19. Her father suggested that she wash her. At the beginning of her 18th birthday, Sina was in bed with a terrible cold. She soon recovered and debuted that same year. Now she has returned for summer and woke up in the body of 19-year-old Sina. It is unclear how the girl moved to the past in the summer, where her debut did not take place. According to the doctor, the lady had been in a coma for a year, but there was no loss of muscle mass. It seems she can start moving easily. Sina should eat easily digestible food. Let her start with boiled meat, porridge, and the like. He will continue to observe her condition. The lady felt as if she was seeing her family for the first time in a long time, and it made her happy. She assured them that everything was all right. The doctor realized that he was no longer needed for now and left. The Duke thanked him warmly for his work, but Sina hasn't seen Yuri anywhere. So the lady asks Sage about her own twin brother. Where is he? Why hasn't he come to her? Now Sina is surprised. She explained that this is her twin brother. Sage said that in their family from the younger generation, there are only two of them. Sina was running along the corridor of the house. They asked her not to run so fast, but the girl did not hear all of this. She thought that if she returned to the past, she thought tens and hundreds of thousands of times that she would not repeat her mistakes. She thought she would listen to her family when they advised her not to marry that man. No, she won't even meet George again from the start. Hollander. But where did Yuri disappear to? After that incident, Sina desperately searched for a hint of her twins' existence for days on end. The attic where they played and kept their toys, Yuri's room, which was located on the floor below, the trees planted with him on their birthday. And all these precious traces evaporated, as if Yuri had never existed. Sina came to that very garden. Sage came up to her and asked, why has she been behaving like this the last few days, and what is she so desperately looking for? Sage asked the girl to tell him what was going on. She turned around and thought, no, I need to pull myself together. She had returned to the past, and I can't make my family worry. They saw a strange sprout sticking out of the ground. The brother didn't remember planting trees here. Their family plants trees here when someone is born. It's best. Sana stopped her brother. She explained, "It is deserted here. It looks better with this sprout. She will water it herself." The brother agreed. Sana suggested Sage to. The girl looked at the sprout. It was strange. It seemed to hint that Yuri had not completely disappeared. But that could only be her imagination. And at home, the maid was talking to the master about the lady. The maid pointed out the changes in Sana. A duke? She thinks so? Of course. According to the woman, Sana had previously studied the ancient language of the Macfadian Empire endlessly. The maid saw the lady going to the garden every day to water the seedling and fertilize it. But the girl seemed to have found her core. The gentleman agreed. The daughter looked better than a couple of days ago. Considering that she woke up and realized that a whole year had passed. The girl was probably confused, even if she tried not to show it. But Saina shouldn't sit within four walls for so long. She needed to find friends. When Saina was watering the sprout, the maid Emily came to her. She informed her about the visit of Lady Burtek. She heard about Saina regaining consciousness. That's why she came to visit. Does the lady want to have tea with a friend? Elizabeth Burtek is the youngest, third daughter of the Burtek family. They met in the Great Hall. The guest asked how the hostess. Liza wants to visit Saina more often, but they don't accept guests here. But Burtek is very happy that the lady is okay. The hostess remembered that Beth was her only friend back then. After the wedding, they drifted apart. Liza was the only one of her peers to talk to her, while the others thought that Saina did not fit in with the group. The guest suggested going shopping together. Liza smiled sincerely at these words. Saina looked at her and thought, but Liza had come all the way to see her. But Saina thanked her guest. She had come all the way, Saina thought. If only a year. 10 years have passed for her. Liza asks her friend not. Liza reminded that Saina missed the last debut, so she can't miss the upcoming one. There is little time left, but she needs to get ready. Saina asked why there was so much trouble. She remembered how in a past life her friend debuted. Saina isn't really interested in it anyway. But the guest didn't debut last year. Saina went into a coma before the lady didn't understand. Did she mean so much to her friend? She seemed to be preparing diligently for her debut. But it turns out that she gave. Liza understands. Her friend is just out of a coma. It's natural. But a debut happens once in a lifetime. Beth didn't lag behind. She suggests the father considers the debut a one-time event in his daughter's life, so she should go. He will inform family friends and other aristocrats. The Duke is sure they need to get the dress ready soon. Maybe order it from Charlie's boutique. The daughter says Beth has reserved it for her. Sage asks if her sister. Yes. She goes with Emily. But the brother is afraid to let them go together. Sage thinks that if he is to become a real knight, he will need a suitable title. He disagrees. Well, what kind? Something that would perfectly match the hair color. Rupert greeted the lady. He called himself her. She was embarrassed and remembered that she called the guy that in her past life. Maybe call the guest Carrot as a knightly nickname. And Sage was joking about the guy was offended. What did he do to deserve such treatment? Saina called on her brother to stop. The streets will be crowded and the girl can't be left without protection. She thought, in her past life, she neglected this and went alone. They arrived in a carriage to the square, and Rupert helped the lady out of the carriage. She looked around and realized how long she hadn't been. Rupert asked the lady to follow him. She thanked him and called him Sir. He warned her against this. The boutique greeted Lady de Beauve and informed her that Elizabeth Burtek is waiting for her inside. Liza saw Saina. She was glad to see her. The girl said that Saina received a dress similar to her friend's. She was disappointed by the similarity, but Beth thought it was very cute. She knew it would fit perfectly. The people around her are sure. The color of the dress on the lady is even more beautiful. According to Liza, if they dress like this, they will look like bosom friends. Saina remembered how in her past life she did not and so she wore everything handed down from Beth. And she dressed for her debut according to the same principle. Maybe they'll tie their hair the same way? They'll be like twins. It was Liza who introduced her friend to George Hollander. Saina does not want to go to the jeweler. Liza asked her friend to find something for her. She reminded her about Beth's excellent taste, but the latter said she wanted to go to the Dubove family shop. Sina understood what her friend really wanted. She disappointedly pointed out the changes in the girl's character. Just a little bit crying, Beth asked. Aren't they best friends? Sina suggested Liza happy now. But the girl turned away and went to the exit, promising to forgive her friend. She feels awkward in front of Beth, but if everything continues as before, a bad ending is inevitable. For the sake of the 7 who cherish Madame de Beauve, she will not repeat her mistakes. The girl needs a custom outfit. Everything will be different from her past life. Time passed, and the first day of the Empire, the maid wonders, is the dress from the Charlize boutique? But how did they manage to sew it? Sina also ordered 50 outfits for the future. She no longer intends to sit at home like in her previous. Today, Sina is wearing this blue dress. The maids were surprised. But this is, as she stood outside with the knight, he asked the lady to return home before the debut evening. The festival itself is an event when the first day is a parade led by a guardian spirit, which smoothly flows into the evening debutante ball. In ancient times, the Arl Promessa civilization lived on these lands. Many people there knew how to control guardian spirit. Today, only 4 families, besides the Imperial, are still able to summon guardian spirits. Rosedale, of the Southlands. Everden. The parade began and people praised the McFadden Empire, including His Highness the Crown Prince. If Sina remembers correctly, the Cremo family is holding a spirit show this year. She heard that they swapped with the Everden because of them. The lady found this strange. After all, in the past life, Everden had calmly taken part in the ceremony. It seemed incredible. Sina saw the spirit Cremo for the first time. In response to the knight's questioning spurt, the lady quickly stated that she had said nothing. She didn't know much if her words were heard by Duke Cremo, but he was unpleasantly surprised by the words of the young lady, and the Duke's eyes were fixed on the girl. A second later, their gazes met. But then she saw another guy. The girl reassured him. She was fine. The guy said that he heard about Sina's return to consciousness. Kaon asked if the girl was feeling better. The lady thought they were limiting their visits because they were preparing for the holiday. But she thanked him for his concern. The girl thought that in this life they were not so close. It turned out that Sina and Kaon, it's so like her. Sina involuntarily agreed. She liked the guardian spirit. Seeing a shadow of doubt on Kaon's face, Sina remembered that it was time for her to go home. Kaon told her about his hope to sit down with her for a cup of tea after a long... A new thought struck the guy. Maybe Sina would give him the first dance of the evening? She looked at him with a deep gaze. Unexpectedly, Sina agreed. This surprised the guy. The lady explained. She was thinking of going with her brother anyway. The girl smiled and answered. The guy asked for it himself. Kaon is happy, and he will. Rupert approached the girl and noticed that the young gentleman would be very upset. Sina understood. This could end up being fatal. The girl is not sure. This is nonsense. Rupert advised to. Then Sage started to reproach Rupert. He assigned him to guard his sister, but he turned out to be useless. The guy can't do anything except wield a sword. Sina defends Rupert. He has done nothing wrong. She was the first to suggest that they be partners at the party. Her brother does not. Sage didn't give in. Did Kaon force her? Maybe he threatened her? The brother grabbed Rupert by the collar and began to accuse him of poor protection of the girl. It was all his fault. Her older brother's personality has changed a lot. Come to think of it, Beth has also changed her partner? Last time Sina danced with, although this is not something to worry about now. Soon the arrival of Lord Ackroyd was announced. It was his sister, Kristen. She came forward and looked at the hostess. The lady declared that her brother's taste was much better than. Kristen was indignant. Who is he? She was not happy that Sina had fooled Kaon and was trying to lasso him. In her opinion, they are worthy of admiration. It was announced that it was necessary to go to the evening. The guest thinks that Sage's eyes are also not bad. So be it. She will let him become her partner. According to the guy, when he told Kristen that he had found a partner, she went into hysterics. Then she insisted on a personal meeting with Sina. She noted that Kaon explained. His sister can't resist beautiful people. She didn't mean anything bad. Walking next to his friend was George Hollander. The girl felt sick and sat down on the floor. Kaon sat down next to her. A frightened Ackroyd offered to take Sina to the infirmary, but she refused. She asked the guy to clench his fist. She rose to her feet and they walked. The debutantes were announced at the palace. Lady Elizabeth, the third daughter. After the dance, the girl asked her father to take her home immediately. The servant informed about the imminent exit of Milady de Beauve. The girl asked. Finally, the last debutante was announced. Lady Saina, daughter of the de Beauve family. Saina looked at the man. She saw his eyes. What a dark and heavy look. Kaon reminded his partner to say hello. People looked at Kaon and recognized him as a gentleman from the Ackroyd clan. They found him charming and noted the similarity of the couple. People called the girl's dress beautiful and elegant. The shoulder line trim, exposing them, gives the image sensuality. Saina noticed how everyone was looking at her. Was it because of the dress? It seemed like she was attracting a lot of attention. The guests were talking about Saina's passion for ancient languages, so she didn't care about her appearance. But that was just a rumor. The presentation of this year's debutantes was drawing to a close. Next came the greeting of Her Majesty the Empress. His Highness the Crown. The Empress celebrated the end of a year without incident with the grace of His Majesty. Now we must not forget to give praise to the 4 ducal families. It seems his condition has not improved. This is a reason to worry. What about the guardian spirit now? Saina thought. And Lady Avetta. She is the Crown Prince's 5th chosen one, and there is still no heir? She did not remember the Crown Prince having children in his past life. The Empress congratulated the beautiful debutantes, the flowers of the current generation. May the cherished blessing descend upon them. The ruler declared the first dance open. During the dance, Saina and Kaon exchanged compliments about their appearance. Soon, the first dance ended. The lady thanked Lord Ackroyd for the pleasant action, but he himself enjoyed it. Suddenly, behind Saina, there was Mr. The girl turned around. She didn't understand why he needed it. She almost fell from excitement, but the Duke caught the She felt a strange aura around the Duke. What was wrong with him? But he dances well. Suddenly, black wings seemed to appear behind. The girl answered. No, she was just nervous. The obsession had disappeared. Was she the only one who saw? Saina allowed him to ask her. The Duke wondered how much the de Beauve family knew about Arl Promessa. The girl did not understand, but the man rephrases the question. Were there spirit contractors among the lady's ancestors? The Macfadian Empire has stood for millennia, and this is due to the spirit guardians and those who... At the beginning of the empire's development, it was rare to find an aristocrat's family without a guardian spirit. Considering that the de Beauve clan has existed since its founding, this is what Saina knows. Crema wonders how many generations this power has been passed down. She can't say for sure because there is no information about the spirit itself, but there is an assumption. It happened more than 100 years ago. Somewhere 3 to 4 generations, Saina smiled. Cremo is also a contractor. In their time, it is a relic of the past. But the Duke wants to visit the de Beauve house if she does not object. The girl was frightened. Why does he need this? The girl simply cannot imagine the reason why his lordship needs this. The man explained. This is Cremo assured that he would come only with the permission of the head of the de Beauve family. This was his personal curiosity. And on the 5th day of the celebration, the family mansion will host an investment salon, a great excuse for a visit. Cremo hopes the lady will Saina realized that she wanted to leave here. She was walking towards the exit and did not want to be the subject of gossip and rumor. The girl said she felt sick and walked around the man. Where did he come from? They haven't met in this life yet. The lady has a head. Saina went out into the fresh air and stood by the railing. She screamed heartily how she hated all this. The girl saw a couple walking towards her. What should she do? She looked down over the railing. When the lady climbed over the railing, her hand slipped and the girl fell down. The couple went out onto the balcony, but Saina was no longer there. George is sure he clearly saw the girl come in here. They wonder why she is not here. Maybe The Duke did make a faint sound, and it was heard upstairs. Beth assumed that her friend had gone into the garden. George smiled and admitted that if someone was secretly waiting for Saina downstairs, it was possible. Liza was sure that Saina had already gone. Because of that incident, George had to marry Saina instead of Beth. Maybe this time they would get married. Saina noticed that The man put the girl down on the ground and pointed out the damage to her dress. He was even ready to compensate for it. Sena was a little, she assured him. Everything is fine with the hand. The Duke said that if the lady knew, she should not do such dangerous things anymore. She could have broken, and then the lady's return would have been pointless. Saina thanked the Duke once again. Brother found the phrase, blinded by the lady's beauty, and is not happy with it. He is sure a blind person would not have written the letter. Saina asked her brother not to read her letters without permission. She would deal with them tomorrow, so let him not interfere. Her brother believed. Saina thought, he is not mistaken. George and his kind require a special approach. Maybe she should hide from the Sage is surprised. Why does he want to meet her and not his father? Why does the Duke need a sister? The girl refused. She would go anyway. Sage wanted to join her, but his sister could handle it herself. She greeted the Duke and called him a noble keeper. They sat on the sofas opposite each other. Cremo said that he had not expected such a visit from the hostess of the house. She could not make the Duke wait long. But Constantine came without warning, so the wait was quite natural. The lady wondered why he had come today. The Duke had been going through the data on the guardians. Why did the Duke become so obsessed with the guardian spirit of their family? There was little in. Suddenly, it was as if someone called Saina by name. She immediately thought of Yuri. The Duke had. That's what he came for. The lady remembered how busy Cremo was. He reassured her. Saina waved her hands in near panic. She assured him that she was fine. Cremo nevertheless took the girl and looked at the girl felt a strange smell, which even made her close one eye. But the wound had disappeared somewhere. Now it had. The Duke gave the lady the bottle. Considering what had happened, she would need the medicine. Saina was in the library, leafing through books. Her thoughts were filled with memories of the Duke touching her. What was she thinking? It doesn't seem like he attaches any importance to it. Maybe Saina is making it up? A few hundred years ago, a lady fell into a coma and unconscious entered the spirit world. There she met a spirit, and this book recounts the At the end, this lady told that she was destined to die. But the guardian spirit helps her, after which she lives happily ever after. If all these books are translated correctly, the guardian spirit will return to the family. But where did her translation notes go? Saina's sleep. Someone was asking her to wake up. She looked, but saw no one. The girl went to the window and noticed a glow under the tree. This something ran in the direction. The lady was horrified. It rushes to. The seedling was surrounded by a fence that was held together with strings. At first, she thought the sprout was broken, but it was not. And around the sapling there was a puppy, which was that very glow. Who is he? Why is he alone and where is his mother? In the morning, the maid came into the mistress's bedroom and saw a dog there. The lady explained. She came across the dog on her walk yesterday. He got lost and she kept him for. The maid admitted that she had never seen a dog with such eyes. Maybe it was a wolf cub? Saina remembered the need to go to the family mansion. At the Dabov mansion in a beautiful dress. She hoped the Duke would like it. She heard the maids making noise. It turned out that some of the cellars were checked, but the stocks were not enough. It is difficult to find good wine in large quantities during the celebration. Saina remembered about southern and eastern wine. The girl smiled mysteriously. There is a solution, but I need to tell my father. And on the day of the reception at the Dabov house, the people drank and did not believe that this delicious wine existed in the East. The guests asked the Count where he found the drink, but Sage, who was standing next to his father, wondered where his sister got this wine. The girl looked at it all. In her past life, she had done a lot to find budget, but it quickly became famous and so expensive that the lady could no longer buy it. Knowing in advance, she would simply buy it on credit and then sell it. She was informed. Saina bowed to the guest and led him to the portraits. She told him how much she had learned during her research. She noticed how it is assumed that this is related to the period of the contract. The Duke wonders how many generations ago these backgrounds appeared, but this period is suspiciously unclear in the records. The lifespan of the heads is short. She looked at the Duke. It was probably a bit rude to ask him. The girl showed the guest ancient manuscripts. There were some that were well preserved. One of them concerned, Saina explained. It translated as something like the traditions of those courtiers and aristocrats. Cremo noticed that the girl was good at Arl. The lady replied, "It's her hobby." Probably rumors say something like, "She's crazy about Arle." Cremo put his hand on the book. He would not flatter. That was a fact. The guest spoke about the last. Sina is surprised. "No partner, but why her?" The Duke answered, "He is interested in her. The lady has not yet looked for someone to." Then it will grow into questions about marriage. If they don't get married, people will start talking about their incompatible personalities, and this will result in another offense. Sina denied. "Not at all. It's not that, she just didn't think about it." Cremo suggested that she was the girl did not like it, but there was no choice. When the maids were dressing her, Sina did not know what would happen next. The housekeepers did not immediately notice the mistress. When they did, they admired her. How beautiful she. Sina was surprised. Such an accessory is not usually given as a gift. Maybe he didn't like the. No, she must stop thinking about it. Her father, brother, and the Duke looked at Sina with those black and deep purple accents. They look like a couple now. As they rode in the carriage, Sina thought the designers might be overlapping. Although the girl also noticed the gloves on Cremo's hands. She assumed he was uncomfortable. Perhaps his skin was sensitive. No, she was clearly very nervous. Her hands were sweating. They finally arrived at the palace. When the Duke shook her hand at the exit, he took off his gloves. An imprecise movement and Sina's feet slipped off the step. As before, her partner caught her. He smiled slightly and said, "The Duke put the lady on the ground and asked her not to walk separately." He gave her his hand and they went to the palace. It was announced. The people in the hall were discussing the newcomers. Didn't Mr. Dubove say? The guests also noticed the good combination of the Duke and his partner's outfits. But maybe that's the point. Empress Charlize has been announced McFadden and demanded to greet the moon, which embraced the night sky of the empire. Sina was surprised by the princess's presence. There were rumors about her illness. Had she really recovered? The empress declared the. Sina looked at the prince and his girlfriend. What was it like in her past life? No matter how little she cared, but the first composition ended right away. Everyone who wanted to was offered to enjoy the dances to the fullest. Cremo offered his partner. During the dance, the Duke told the girl about the presence of undiscovered relics from the time of Arl Promes on the territory of Cremo. The Duke said there was a good reason. If she was interested, he would give her a tour. She agreed, even though it was far and dangerous. The melody ended and Sina decided to leave. The Duke was sure they needed to continue the conversation. Wasn't she interested in seeing Merevda? Sina's face changed. She asks for forgiveness. It's not that she's not interested, but she assumed the Duke was talking about feelings. And his actions? Why do that? Sina saw Beth and several other ladies in front of her. The lady was glad. Milady was surprised. At such a time, few people appeared in the restroom. Lisa decided to introduce her friend to the other girls. If Sina had been the same, she would have doubted. But her 30-year-old gut senses her hidden intentions. Marilyn was here, Harbo and Ellen Burns, the Crown Prince's bride. Sina didn't understand why Yvette would introduce her. The ruling line of McFadden has inherited the will of the royal protectors, and the oath to protect their people runs in their blood. To do this, 2 conditions must be met. The first is to find a woman of suitable noble blood. The second is to prove her ability to conceive. The prince is attached to Yvette, but if she does not become pregnant within a certain period of time, the wedding will not take place. Sina thought it right not to ask anything now and not to argue once again. The prince's bride noted that the guest might not know. Kristen came up to the lady, her arms wide open and smiling. She was surprised by the number of people in the room. Kristen hopes that she will not be refused. This confused Sina. Oea replied that she was not used to this. Kristen said she had a keen eye and good manners. If the prince's fiancé had been in the room, Chris asked if Lady de Beauvais was friends with Liza. She didn't know either. It all depended on what you meant by friendship. So, how does Kiki see friendship? She should congratulate her friend when something good happens. Christina asked Sina to imagine the situation. She was marrying a high-status, rich and handsome man. She remembered how the high society was shocked by the news of Duke Cremo's marriage to Elizabeth. Evil tongues called her cunning. Sina was also a little jealous of her friend. This was a great opportunity to see Merevda nearby. but to think like that was a betrayal of her own husband. The girl constantly reproached herself when envy slipped into her speech. Sina did not answer her friend. She thinks that the fact that she was delaying the answer speaks for itself, but she does not agree. Sina admitted that she doesn't get along well with others. Kristen smiled and hugged her friend. She's so sweet. How can she not find friends? Chris shouted back, "Nonsense, it's part of Saina's charm. The stranger's name is Evia Dimitri. She is sure that she is not so wrong." Kristen asks not to worry about her. She is ready to become a friend of the girl. She would really like to have such a sister. Chris was off. The idea is good, because there is no hope for that guy. Poor Saina listened. He's a bit dumb, but he and Kristen are good for each other. Saina told her friend that she wouldn't mind if she became her daughter-in-law, but now she understands why Kristen likes Kiki so much. Saina is not very good at expressing her thoughts, but she thinks Chris asked her interlocutor to dance with Kaon today. Without Saina, he won't come off the wall all evening. She didn't believe it, but it turned out to be true. Kaon asked what was wrong with his partner. She replied, "She was just thinking." These words made the guy feel better. He thought the lady was. The dance ended and Saina announced that she was going home. She had had a great time today. The lady headed for the exit, but Crown Prince Killian appeared in front of her. Without waiting for an answer, he grabbed the girl's hand and led her along. He wondered how it was. The girl answered, "It was a regular waltz." Killian was asking, were they planning a joint visit to the salon? Partners in a relationship? The girl was indignant in her thought. Why was the prince concerned with such questions? Someone called the heir. It was Iveta, and she wanted to dance. There was no anger on Iveta's face, but Saina felt awkward. She wasn't dancing because she wanted to, and let them sort things out without her. Saina saw Beth in the crowd. Only she had some strange expression on her face. The lady told the prince that she had to go. She felt unwell. She didn't Saina's debut a mistake? In her thoughts, she did not notice the Duke of Cremo approaching. Wouldn't his potential apology burden her? The girl assured him, no, she wasn't used to such celebration. Saina said the Duke might have business here, but he denied it. He came here anyway because of her. Lady Debove's second ball was both short. At home, Saina saw yesterday's puppy in the room. She happily picked it up. How did the little animal live without her? The girl looked up at the dog and was shocked. The girl explained the dog's reaction by the fact that it probably smelled bad. Was it the smell of the carriage? She decided to take a bath. Saina felt like she was trying to please her husband. She realized how tired she was today. She lay down and hugged the dog, wishing him good night. The lady got up from her bed and looked at the puppy. How did he know about her and her brother's custom of wishing good things before going to bed? The maid asked her if she had been crying. Saina replied that she was just tired. That's why they were swollen. The maid pointed out that the ladies. Saina asked, what about her request about missing dogs? The maid looked through the ads, but there was not a single similar animal there. The lady wants to keep the dog. She wondered what name would suit him. Poopy? Hearing this, it was decided that this baby would be called Yori. The maid reminded Saina of the need to wash, dress, and have. The maid explained. The lady's debut was a great success, and she had filtered out some of the messages. How to respond to all this? The first letter was from the Velua specialty literature store. In her past life, Saina often went there and even wiped the steps. After the wedding, she didn't have the shop welcomed Lady Debove and noted that she had not visited for a long time. However, the shop assistant is not surprised, and the seller got an interesting book. Since his Arl is not as good as the lady's, he can't read it. Some of the symbols are completely unfamiliar. Saina was very interested in this. The maid handed the lady a letter that seemed important to her. Saina took it in her hands and smelled the pleasant scent coming from it. The puppy was also interested in the letter. The maid asks Saina to be careful because the dog will ruin the dress with its claws. She does not agree. The letter was from her sister Kiki. She was interested in how Saina got home after the ball. She also invited her officially to tea at the Ackroyd family. The maid was also delighted with the offer. She considers Kiki to be part of the upper crust, so it was good that. Saina continued to look at the mail. From Beth. That's okay, but why did Elaine write to her? Burns ? Saina smiled and replied that the dog was only sensitive to smells. He might not like the scent of the letter. She pulled the message from Beth out of the dog's mouth. Liza called them best friends in the letter, but the events of the week had distanced them. Her friend suggested going shopping together and having a cup of tea. Beth has set a date for the meeting, this coming Wednesday, and is eagerly awaiting an answer. Saina looks at the word but Liza was her only friend, so Saina held on to her. After returning in time, Lady Dabov began to notice strange behavior in her friend. The letter from Burns was not in the gold envelope that is typical for royalty. However, she is a Veda, so it is understandable. After the incident at the ball, Ellen still hasn't given up on the idea of inviting Saina to tea. She already thought that their relationship would not improve. Although it is worrying, Saina does not want to make such an enemy. Sage approached them and asked what his sister was doing. Saina herself was surprised. The heir, among other things, sent her a message, addressing it to the lady with the noble violet eye. The girl reported how they danced, and the prince also asked a couple of questions about the duke. He wondered if they were dating. Sage demanded to ignore the heir. The brother asked his sister to keep him informed of everything. He would report everything to their father. Saina had no— On the day of tea, Saina asked Rupert to take her to the bookstore. Before getting into the carriage. When they arrived, the girl asked the servant to stand outside. She was here for the first time in her life. She went inside and asked where the grandfather's cellar was. Instead, there was a young man behind the counter. An unpleasant guy with a bad smile, suggested the girl to look around for now. The client didn't like his behavior. Where are his manners? Maybe. Saina touched the book, but the seller who came up immediately called it Aaronhorn. Saina looked at the pink shade of the seller's hair. This color is typical of the Everton family. What branch of the family does this person belong to? The guy demanded that Finally, the grandfather came and was indignant. Why was the grandson bothering the girl? The old man explained, the binding is in poor condition, but it's enough for review. The young salesman continued pestering the girl. Saina looked at the book and saw so many unfamiliar symbols. She decided to take this book and another one. The girl promised to contact the bookman after the restoration of the desired work and left. Soon she arrived at Since it was the girl's first time, he decided to show her everything. When asked if he was busy now, the owner of the house promised to do it quick. Saina thanked her. She had been choosing for a long time and, as it turned out, not in vain. They walked through the girl saw a pattern on the wall based on the Aral language. Kaon did not understand the traveler and was surprised by her mention of the language. Kaon admitted that he had never looked closely and knew nothing about it. They were so active at the wall and Saina hit her guide's That's how Kristen caught them. The guest reported what had happened to the hostess, who criticized her brother. Chris asked the guest not to worry about her brother. And when she comes here, she must first meet her. Saina explained. She accidentally saw Kaon. Kristen apologized to the guests for being late, and the guest did the same, not forgetting to introduce herself. She was surprised. There were only two. Chris turned to Lady Dabov and asked with a smile, She doesn't understand why there are so few of them? Yes. Chris introduced the girl to Evaya, who she already knew Dimitri. The second one was called Floria Everton. Saina knew her as a relative of the owner of the Spirit of Aaronhorn. Duke. Saina was delighted and almost gave her name, but the Duchess asked her not to pretend to be her. She is not the first to change. Lady Dabov disagrees. She wasn't thinking about her brother at all. Floria didn't understand why the guest started to admire her so. She screams. In vain, the girls did not believe her words about the obsession of Lady Saina Arl Promessa. Floria apologized. Both ladies decided to address each other informally. All of Saina's relationships with people depended on her. But in her past life, she had never thought. Then Saina came to the house on Rohatun Street to meet Beth. She didn't think how much fun she would have with people she barely knew. The hostess of the house was so confused, but one guy helped her. The more Saina talked to people, the more questions she had about her friend's behavior. Saina looked at them with displeasure. Was Beth really her friend? She was glad to have help from George. George did not consider himself a hero. He did what he had to. Everything is like in Saina's past life. Hollander is sure that Milady will be uncomfortable with a stranger, so he will refuse. Saina then decided to leave herself. She asked her friend to thank the guy, and they would talk later. Saina apologized. It was the first thing that came to her mind. She did not understand why these two were pretending to be strangers. George grinned. If anyone heard, they would think he was torturing the girl. Rupert ran into the room. The guard was worried. Did Hollander do something? Sana called the guard to follow her. They went out. When George and Beth were left alone, he asked. He looked at her, and then what? Liza asked her boyfriend to shut up. She was upset. And Sana sat at home and analyzed all this. How pathetic Beth had been considered by Lady DeBove then. And the latter's acquaintance with Hollander was not. The maid looked at her mistress with undisguised joy, but she cooled her down. This is not. The Duke turned out to be much nicer than she thought. According to the maid, he probably has enough professionals in his circle, but he asks for help from the mistress. Cremo doesn't seem like the type to offer work like that. Soon, Saina received a basket with the necessary things and got into the carriage. On the way, Saina admired the places where the Duke's estate is located. She decided to familiarize herself with the materials before her arrival. The noise was loud, and even the coachman became agitated. He asked if Milady was. The dog is not allowed to run and jump wherever he wants. So they arrived at the place. The lady was met at the estate by the chief butler, Rado. No need. The Duke's voice rang out. He entered the auditorium and thanked the guests for their visit. He wondered if there were any problems. The Duke himself will manage without the butler. He decided to take his leave. As soon as the master of the house wanted, suddenly Yori appeared out of nowhere and started barking at Constantine. The girl ran. Sana looked at the thing in horror. The puppy was barking, and Cremo could not stop it. The Duke called the creature that rushed. The black lion looked at the girl with the dog, and they looked at him. Sana approached the beast and touched his muzzle, but he did not react. The guardian spirit or something else did not resemble Marevda. The latter has a twin? The Duke asked if the lady was hurt. Constantine apologized for the spirit, but the guest herself wanted to ask forgiveness for the puppy's behavior. She did not expect him to appear. The Duke took the dog in his arms and examined him. He thought it was a wolf, but Saina denied this. The owner of the mansion is sure that this animal will be useful when it grows up. He gave it to the guest and asked. Cremo walked ahead, and Saina with the maid behind. The girl looked at the man. She did not imagine him like this, but he is kinder than he seems. Saina was delighted with the master of the house's office. His secret must not come out. The Duke offered the presence of a butler if the guest was uncomfortable being alone with him. The girl opened it and saw something that looked like a diamond. She almost guessed. It was a black diamond. Saina dropped the diamond, but Yori jumped and caught it with his teeth. The girl was scared, thinking she would see scratches on the stone. In her mind, she sold the estate to compensate the Duke. She took the diamond and thought she would see a scratch, but it was Arl. Cremo is glad. The lady quickly understood. Saina wondered if the Duke would trust her with such a valuable item. The stone didn't have any special meaning for him. Cremo explained. It was used to scare away monsters or as an adornment for ladies. In any case, the work must be kept secret, so foreigners can. The Duke asks her not to worry about this. The level of his security is worthy of respect. The girl will not suffer. Saina decided to trust him. She hoped no one would find out. She vowed to use the skills, but she did not promise a perfect translation. Continuing to examine the diamond, she suggested visiting once a week. The Duke clarified. Only he opens the box. Would it be difficult for her? She should try not to put the Duke in a difficult position for him. He asks not to worry. Cremo is glad about the girl's trip. She dreamed that Beth was telling Constantine about the importance of the role of the Duchess in society. Cremo did not understand when he asked for such a. Beth is sure it doesn't matter. She asked for 2 weeks and talked about the need to stay here until the next appointment. Cremo asked again. Liza asked to wait, but the Duke pushed the unfortunate girl away. He forbade the reception and cut her budget in half. The girl. He doesn't see the point. There have been misunderstandings about this before. Beth looked at him, and the Duke reflected on how he had already made Beth, sitting on the floor from helplessness and grief, asked how he could say that. The Duke answered. She came to him. Cremo suddenly laughed, turned sharply, and hit the globe with his hand, causing it to fly straight at the girl. Saina screamed and. Saina stood by the wall and listened to the girls discuss Lady Bartek's desire to get the Duke. He had been taken in by her pretty. Cremo's choice. They didn't know him as the type to be attracted to cute faces, and now Bartek will hold a. If this is a marriage of convenience, what kind of relationship do these two really have? If Beth is clear, what benefit does the Duke? The girl didn't understand, and her friends instantly figured it out. Yes, she was only in there. Yvetta Elin Burns can already use golden envelopes? These girls' club Olive Tree holds events at the palace from time to time. The guests. Chris noted a line in the letter where Burns mentioned her desire to invite the younger royal generation to the club's meetings, regardless of gender. So now they have to invite the prince? The girls continued to be indignant. Yvetta is going. If he belongs to the royal family, he should behave appropriately. The prince wants an heir, that's understandable. If we keep. Sina didn't understand if it was okay to discuss this. The girls thought, should they invite? The friends cheered up. It's true. Such things are not in Yvetta's competence, so in any case, Sina was immediately offered to join the next tea party. She agreed with excitement. The girls simply did not worry and behaved there. At home, the lady had a guest, as the maid had told her. Sina did not know who might show up uninvited, but she remembered Beth. She recalled that scene with Hollander. Sina asked, why is she here? She was told, last time they parted on a bad note. Liza had a good talk with him. Sina was surprised by the fact of a robbery near the well-guarded Rohatun Street in broad daylight. That's why she goes secretly to Kwabang Street. Sina asked, is it quiet there too? Lisa almost screamed. Sina thought about Beth's family. She wasn't the richest, but she didn't worry about every coin. Out loud, she was stingily glad that her friend was okay. She added, it was unlike. Beth just wanted to know how she was. But Sina knows well about Hollander's lack of attitude to art, more like a brothel. Liza didn't find him suspicious. He was polite and attractive to her. Sina understood what kind of men her friend liked. But he personally. Beth mentioned Saina's association with the Olive Tree Club. She is disappointed. Bartek almost cried. Why is she pathetic, Lady Dubov? The latter was indignant. Isn't it Beth who comes to her when she just needs something? Lisa never came to a friend just like that. Even when Elizabeth visited her friend during her illness, she talked about dresses. Previously, Sina did not understand what was wrong with their friendship. She remembered the offers to go to a boutique, a jewelry store. Now her eyes are open. Beth finds it all very funny. She reproaches her ways of expressing friendliness. Sina thought, she really had never been the first to contact her friend. She had never even thought about it. Suddenly, Yuri grabbed the hem of Beth's dress, and Sina called the little animal to her. Finally, Rupert grabbed it and lifted it up. She was no longer screaming, but smiling. She had found a place where she wanted to go with Sina. Would she keep her company? Beth promised to write everything in detail in a letter, but now she had to go. They said goodbye. In the evening, in the bedroom, Sina lectured the puppy on morals. If he continued to behave like this, he would be thrown out. The dog looked as if he was sorry. The girl did not understand where her friend was rushing off to again. It's not easy for Lady Dubov to deal with people. Give her friend one last chance. If George isn't involved, everything will be fine. In the morning she worked in. Sina looked at Constantine. She immediately understood that it was difficult to get close to him. But now they see each other often. Sina felt like she was drowning in it. The lady's thoughts were interrupted by the host, who offered her tea. Sina was embarrassed and covered her face with her hands. She was afraid that the Duke would think negatively of her. The cookies turned out to be really tasty. Cremo is glad to hear it. The lady has stated her long-standing desire, he thought, looking at his hand. The girl was scared. She had obviously touched something personal. She apologized if her question had offended her. Sina looked at the man's hand. How graceful it was. And what was she supposed to understand? If you don't take into... The lady agreed, a little cold. But a duke from the north? He smiled and asked. They continued to sit, holding hands. The next day, Beth came to Sina. Liza will tell her everything later, but now it is time to move. Sage was watching the ladies. The maid asked him to go and eat because, according to the maid, Sina has blossomed lately. Although she had been sad and depressed for a long time, it seems that the lady has become more Sage is happy about it. Sina and her friend arrived for tea at Ellen's Burns, as it turned out. The girl was surprised. Ellen looked down at the guest and demanded to answer questions. Saina demanded to take her hands off her. Whoever Avetta was, she had. According to the haughty lady, Saina has danced a couple of times with His Majesty and looks down on Avetta. Lady Debove doesn't think so. What? Saina is only willing to be punished for a real sin. Regardless of her title, Ivetta's actions are outrageous. The victim stood up. Rupert opened the door with a question to the lady. Does she want to come back so much? Ellen, seeing this, screamed with hate. She looked at Beth. She lowered her head. If she had been a real friend, she would have warned about this. Then the girl would not have been so disappointed. Elaine shouted at them to shut up. Who were they afraid of? Some pathetic aristocrat? The villainess looked at Beth. Liza can't be trusted with anything. She lowered her head in shame and asked for forgiveness. And Saina arrived for the Olive Tree Club's tea party. Saina entered, striking with her beauty. She answered, "So today?" The next second, they were already amazed at the guests' ingenuity. She put on beautiful scarlet shoes. Chris announced that a kind of Saina understood. She was sitting next to Floria. The girls exchanged pleasantries, but Chris bowed. It was a great honor for her and the others to see Her Highness here. May the spirits of the royal family protect her. The princess, in turn, wished everyone present happiness and the ladies asked the princess to draw a place. She was surprised. Was this their famous lottery? Saina prayed in her soul that the guest would get there. Today, the ladies met in a luxurious hall in honor of the opening of the garden in the Ellen Palace Burns. That was the question everyone was asking. The ladies thanked Her Highness once again for the opportunity to find time to attend their evening. Chris announced. She sat down and felt relief. There was a request to change places 1 and 2 at each table. Saina paid attention to the last number. The princess asked her, "Is she Lady Debove?" The girl answered, "Yes, she is." Next, was she the Duke's partner at the debutant? The crowned guest had never been close to the Duke, so she was interested. Saina told about Constantine's invitation to work on one issue. The guests understood. Saina is unhappy because the Duke himself promised to keep everything a secret, and then there are such rumors. But he said out loud that it was about her. Floria recalled how she was too busy preparing for the tea party that time, so she missed the parade. Remembering the spirit, Saina mentioned its size. The girls were pleasantly shocked. Their friend not only debuted then, but also managed to see the parade? Yes, she visited. Saina looked at her friends. If you look closely at each one, many have a simple side. And the princess, Lady Debove, wanted the atmosphere to remain like this. Suddenly, the door opened and the crown prince appeared on the threshold. Chris stood up and greeted the distinguished guest. He waved his hands 6. No need to pay attention to him. Everything is fine. According to the prince, his younger sister has not been to such events for a long time. So he is interested in how they are doing. The princess is unhappy. Her brother was not invited here. The heir assured, he will definitely not interfere. According to Chris, the ladies had a good opportunity. The prince smiled. Is this the lottery? They announced, seats 1 and 4. The ladies sitting there were asked, the heir has prepared special gifts for the girls. He does not want to deprive anyone. The ladies are very happy. This is the same roseflower tea from the palace. What a rich color. The women tried. The prince wants to tell how to drink tea to maximize the flavor. You need to add a pinch of salt, and the taste will play. Everyone got worried and started running around. Is Saina all right? We need a doctor. She's all wet. The prince has a talented doctor. Saina screams that she is fine and demands to be let go. The prince does not understand why. Christo decided to go with the victim, asking Avia to take care of the rest. She was worried whether everything was okay with Saina. The lady apologized for the incident on behalf of her brother. At Saina's first tea party, and such a mishap. She spread her hand. The princess reminded her of her current affairs, asking her guests to go home and rest. The next morning, the olive tree came to see how Saina was doing. The ladies apologized for the early visit. The lady of the mansion assures, she is fine. Welcome. Kaon also showed up. They went into the living room. Lord Ackroyd is worried. Is the lady really all right? Yes, it wasn't boiling water. Everyone looked at Saina. She was surprised. I asked what they were looking at. The ladies smiled shyly. The maid tried when she learned about the visit of the mistress's friends. She doubted. They were friends, weren't they? The girls chattered. If it weren't for the prince. How could that be? He didn't even apologize. He was informed about the visit of his sister's friends, so he wanted to greet everyone personally. Chris saw him. Isn't Sage here for her sake? The Count's son was slightly embarrassed. Yes, but the guest is his sister's friend. A servant entered and announced the arrival of a guest to Lady Sena, Duke Cremo. She stood up and, asking for an apology, left. Sena walked along the corridor and wondered why the Duke had come so suddenly. She saw him and froze for a moment. They were standing almost touching each other. The girl pointed it out to him. Sena stumbled and almost fell down, but the girl calmed down and asked why the Duke was here. He apologized. The conversation about the wound was heard by Sage, who was standing behind. The lady remembered that she had not told her brother anything. The girl told about her friends who were visiting her. Chris came up and asked the hostess not to keep such an important guest waiting outside. They were all sitting in the living room. Chris asked the Duke what his relationship was with the lady of the mansion. She waved her hands in Sena, hearing this, allowed even greater misunderstandings to arise among people. Duke, if it is important, then they see each other as needed. Sena was visibly nervous. Everything is not the same. Kaon said this when he introduced himself to the Duke. The latter did not understand what misunderstanding he had in mind. The Lord explained. The girl had just... For the Duke, it may not matter, but for the lady, it is a different matter. Cremo smiled slightly. Unnecessary? The guest was surprised by the puppy's repeated attack, and Sena had to apologize for him. She explained, the dog is small, so it causes a lot of trouble. Chris chimed in. Is this the same dog she was told about? Yes. Chris wanted to hold the puppy in her arms. Kaon also expressed the same desire, but the dog did not give in. Sena headed for the exit, asking them not to pay attention to her. The dog barked discontent. Ahead, she saw Beth. She was smiling as she told how she heard about yesterday's incident. Sena thought she would never see. She answered dryly. No harm done. Who told Beth about it anyway? Liza. What difference does it make? She suggested. Sena tried to stop the guest, but she had already entered the hall. Her gaze expressed delight at those present. Brother and sister Ackroyd, Beth called herself Siena's closest friend. She came to visit the victim. While she was ranting, she didn't notice how, having done its business, the little animal ran away. The guests shouted and asked to catch it. In the end, the maid caught it. The victim, in despair, could not understand how her friend could allow this to happen. How could she keep such a beast at home? The girl looked at the outfit. Liza was lying with her eyes closed. They examined her. The verdict was, she was scared and lost consciousness. No injuries. Kayan's sister noted that the puppy behaved normally until the arrival of the Count's daughter, Bartek. Only then did he start acting up. The lady is sure that the guest should have informed about her visit earlier. Chris wondered, are they so? She turned to the guest with a slightly frightened face and asked them all to come without prior notice. Kristen hugged the girl and said that she was just joking. She had just mentioned the Duke of Kaon when her brother showed up with royal roses and a festive box. She didn't want to explain anything to him. Sena did not understand. Is this from the princess? Brother demanded to take the gifts. He does not dare to open someone else's gift from the imperial family. The three of them returned to the living room where Kaon grabbed the Duke by the jacket. The lady screamed in horror. Were they fighting? They apologized to the ladies if they had scared them. The girls reassured them. Everything was fine. They opened. By Edlin, do you mean the craftswoman who sews exclusively for the royal court? Yes. Is there a complete set in the... The Duke was also interested in the clothes, and he wondered what had happened yesterday. He asked, does the lady know the meaning of receiving a dress as a gift from a gentleman? Her thoughtful look attracted the attention of her family. What's wrong with her? Everything is fine. Sena doesn't know. He came suddenly. Does the girl understand how serious this situation can become? The lady did not understand why the crown prince was paying so much attention to her. He had a vet, a representative of the monarchy, not so simple. He looked at his daughter. She thought she was being considered as the next candidate. The Count remembered from the election of Ellen Burns 2 years past. Whoever the prince's chosen one is, if she cannot bear an heir, she will have to step aside. even for appropriate compensation, but this is not the place. Therefore, families with little influence often offer their daughters for the role of Iveta to strengthen their power. Sena understood. This is a She waves it off. She didn't want to. But is there a choice? Sina wonders what to do if an imperial decree appears. Father is sure. The aristocrats will not accept such a document. The count disagreed with this. He allowed protests, but by the time they managed to change something, they would have lost their daughter. Dad smiled, put his hand on his daughter's hand, and promised. The next day, Sina talked to the maid. She told the guards about the ban on letting the lady into the house Bartek. Yes, the ban is not because of the puppy? The lady answered, not because of him. Sina decided to ban her friend from entering of her own free will, but the little animal can't stand Beth. She may be nice, but Yori instinctively knows who is kind to her mistress and who is not. After a while, the lady walked down Rohatun Street. If it weren't for that elixir, the girl would have had problems. And the Duke was supposed to be knighted, and she didn't congratulate him. Then she had to buy a present. What's interesting about this store? The salesperson greeted the customer. Sina pointed to a white fur item on the display case. The salesperson explained, probably, large items are not an option. Do you have gloves in the shop? The seller answered, it's easy, but there are a lot of orders now. The client promised to pay 10 times the amount if the work was completed by the following Tuesday. It will be done. The door opened and a male voice asked the shopkeeper if the goods had arrived. Sina turned around in fear. It was the guy from the bookstore. He smiled. Did they meet again? The girl is curious. Isn't it customary to introduce yourself first? According to the bookman, he noticed from the first that the girl was radiating a strange. The guy didn't let up. He needed to know why the girl was here. She tried to ignore him. He suggested going on a date. Sina looked at him in surprise. The bookman did not understand why the lady was looking at him like that. Was it strange for her to hear an invitation for a date? And he, by the way, was quite popular. Sina asked the persistent. She doesn't want to say the name, doesn't want to go on a date. How can he leave? Sina asked. Who in their right mind would ask someone out on a date whose name they don't know? She saw the right size and pointed at them. The scribe thought about it. He understood. This is for a gift. And if it is for him as a gift, he will send us. It hurts him to part like this. He was intrigued last time and couldn't even fall asleep. The maid who was watching this suggested calling a night, but if it coincided 3 times, it meant fate. According to him, their next meeting meant one thing. The lady was his fate. He immediately covered. Sina promised to introduce herself then. He glanced at her. What about a date? Sina replied. She will think about it if it happens. Meledia turned out to be unapproachable for the scribe. He did not understand why his heart was beating so much. When the lady Sina ran out of the shop in horror before the eyes of the astonished shop assistant. The book Lady Debove walked down the street and recalled the scene in the shop. What nonsense. A strange young man. Rupert ran up. The guard apologized for his absence. Out of nowhere, a white mare appeared and bit the poor fellow on the butt. Noticing the bewilderment, the guard realizes that this horse distracted him and he did not guard the lady properly. Maybe he should write a report? Sina reassured him. There is no. Rupert smiled a little. If the lady wants to, let her laugh. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. They decided not to go back. Sina was met at the mansion by a butler. Will the lady go straight to the study? Yes. I see, then tea and snacks will be served there straight away. The lady had grown accustomed to the estate and would decipher the inscription engraved on the stone. She knocked on the study and called the Duke, but he did not answer. The window was open, the wind was blowing through the room, and papers were flying all over the perimeter. Were the doors to the terrace open too? She closed the window and he suddenly woke up and took the guest by the hand. He apologized. The lady caught him by surprise. She doesn't think so. Nothing serious. The Duke is just sleeping in the cold. The Duke did not hear the guest enter. Did she look for him for a long time? No, the door was open, so she came in straight away. Cremo was not himself. The lady was worried about his condition. The master of the house explained. The man apologized, but could he hold her hand a little longer? He seemed to be seriously frozen while sitting in the open. Her hands are warm and they will really warm, Cremo? He fell asleep, but what should she do? She saw the Duke's face and his beautiful blue eyes. His lips were also pretty. Why was he so close? Was the kiss always so pleasant? She looked around and saw them in the Duke's office. The girl opened her eyes wide. So this isn't a dream? What to do? The Duke woke up and asked her to be calm. The girl didn't understand when everything had taken a wrong turn. When she took his hand. Or from the moment Saina noticed the Duke's eyes. He was sleeping. Seriously? The lady had to get out. She made a couple of moves and the Duke fell on her on the sofa. The Duke did not think about the guest's feelings and behaved badly. The girl thought, did she feel this when she looked at him? Saina was surprised. How he kissed her on the lips. The man apologized again. He reminded about the late hour. So the lady will stay, perhaps, with him? She wondered why the Duke was apologizing. He replied, he was not doing it to be considered frivolous. Cremo noticed this. The girl reminded her about the potion from the Duke that helped her that time, and the box as a token of gratitude. She removed the note sticking out. He took it and read it out loud. He noted the beautiful handwriting of the girl. The Duke wants to continue receiving messages from her, preferably of a loving nature and filled with feelings. Saina doesn't think white is the most practical color, but she thought that these gloves would suit him. Since the host of the house received a gift, he should thank her. He repeated that if she didn't like it, she could push him away. In the evening, the Duke walked Saina down the street. She promised to meet next week. The man considers such addresses no longer relevant between them. The girl reminded him of her name. The Duke was sure they were close enough to call each other informally. She looked at him and Saina apologized. Streams of thoughts were tearing her consciousness apart. In this life, she can't fall in love. The idea of marriage, it wasn't that she didn't want to. Why start a relationship if the end was obvious? There was no reason not to want a love affair just because you weren't planning on getting married, but she thought about how strangers will discuss her breakup with the Duke with relish, which is why the girl sees no point in dating anyone. Saina does not want to be the center. She imagined how gossips were remembering Saina de Bove, Hollander's wife, who had affairs with 2 men at once. And George beat his wife out of fear that many men were. Cremo asked the servants to prepare 2 carriages without coats of arms. Since it is late, there is no need to create unnecessary. They were riding in a carriage. Constantine said, he wants it. The girl did not understand, but he specified, to be with her. Does Saina really only her body? The lady asked if the Duke was interested in her body. He did not deny it and really wanted to touch the girl. She remembered scenes from her past. Cremo would have liked to be content with holding the girl's hand, but when he saw her smile, the man could not hold back. When the lady woke up in his arms, she smiled so tenderly, and the Duke thought that she liked him. Therefore, he will not deny the need to feel the lady's body and her warmth. Holding the girl's hand, the cold leaves his body. Thanks to this, the Duke falls asleep. Saina asked, does he have insomnia? Yes, something like a side effect of the contract with the guardian spirit. The girl heard about. The Duke said it straight out. He doesn't want to let Saina go, and what he said is not the only reason. He likes Lady de Bove as a woman. Saina agrees to hold her companion's hand, but suggests starting everything as friends. The Duke looked at her warmly and gave his consent. In the evening in the bedroom, a girl who looks like Elizabeth hugged a guy who looks like Constantine Cremo. She called him darling and asks, is he not cold anymore? She promises to warm him up even better. The guy looked at the girl with displeasure. What is she doing? Let her not interfere where she is not wanted. And he pushed her away. The lady reminded the man of the need to have an heir. He doesn't need. A man doesn't want children from someone whose fidelity is in doubt. The girl looked at him and answered, he looks like a mom. The guy is unhappy. When she enjoyed the benefits, everything was fine. And now she blames him. The man made it clear that their relationship is just for show. And the lady has not. The husband looked at his wife and reproached her. He did not count on her conscience, but she was too stuck up. Does she understand what it is? Therefore, the husband will take care of the safety of his wife until it becomes clear. Something black appeared in the room and reached for the unfortunate woman, and Saina opened her eyes wide. She was lying on the bed. Yori was sleeping next to her. This was the second time she had had a dream. A maid came in and brought a letter in a golden envelope. From the Imperial Palace? No way. After reading it, I realized I had to be with the representatives of royal. The next day, Lady Saina de Beauvais was met at the palace and taken to the hall. Rupert was not allowed in and had to be left out. Saina thought they were in the library. So magnificent. The princess liked this place too. She imagined the guy next to her, a bodyguard. The princess also named Saina. The royal person is grateful to the girl for her consent to the proposal. The place for them was ready. The princess called to come to him. The ladies were drinking. Saina thanks the lady again. It's all thanks to her. The crown princess reminded, is Lady Debove interested in Arl Promessa? And the princess's favorite is the halcon from the southwest. The airflow that forms when the halcon takes off is impressive. It cuts through the sky. The intruding princess asked if the guest had ever seen such a thing. She replied, she liked Aaronhorn of the Aberdeen. The princess pointed out the time. How quickly it had flown by, and it was time to say goodbye. Having asked to bring her friends, they said goodbye. Saina noted that she had sincerely enjoyed today's meeting. Saina was pleasantly surprised. It's amazing how much new you can learn in a day. She didn't expect that Her Highness would also be interested in the topic. They walked, but let Saina seem a stranger. She asked the maid if they were going the right way. She answered. The crown prince's angry face immediately came to mind. Saina stopped and demanded to be told honestly where she was being taken. Otherwise, she would not move from the spot. The maid replied that an influential person was waiting for her. Saina reminded about the invitation only from the princess. It dawned on the girl. Was she really being led by order of the mistress of the mansion? Saina correctly understands that there is no option not to go. She does not know anything about the possible machinations of the crown prince, but she will. The guest was surprised, but greeted the lady. Yvette is glad to meet, and she also has a hobby, making bouquets of royal roses. Elaine wonders if the guest knows how to make bouquets. Saina never learned this, so it's unlikely. Yvette is surprised. How could it be that the noble lady didn't? But the heir's bride is ready to teach the guest. Let her first give her 5 roses of each color. Saina did not understand. Elaine seemed to warn about the presence of thorns and the need to be careful. And then a male voice asked a question. Why force a guest to do dangerous things? Well, Lady Saina got hurt. It was the crown prince. Ellen asked fearfully why he had come. The heir took the guest by the hand and ordered the servants to bring water to wash the wound. The girl considered it the prince continued to hold the lady's hand, although she tried to break free. The guy did not understand why she was behaving like that with him. The next moment, Saina finally. The heir is sure there is no need to rush. Isn't the girl wounded? He grabbed her hand again. The unfortunate near prisoner demanded to be allowed to leave. Saina, really, she had to go. The prince was already mentally giving her advice. Men prefer soft women, not prickly ones. She should take this into account. She returned to her companions and demanded. Now she can't figure it out on her own. But this time the lady is not alone. She has a brother and a father. Rupert, who was sitting on horseback, asked her. Saina was riding in a carriage. Suddenly it started to rain. She thought, maybe it was worth waiting until tomorrow. Through the window, the lady saw Rupert on a horse. According to the guard, the rain was not so heavy that it was necessary to stay there, so the lady had nothing to worry about. He advised the girl to close the window so as not to get wet. Soon, Saina heard a strange hum from above. She was asked not to open the window because hail was falling from the sky. The dangerous movement caused the carriage to stagger and the lady almost fell out. The maid was very scared but the next second the carriage door opened and the maid Scylla fell to the ground. With difficulty, the coachman stopped the horses and Rupert was already trying to bring the maid round. He quickly examined her and made sure that the girl was safe. Saina anxiously demanded that the bleeding be stopped. The guard had already provided first aid. Saina made a decision. They had better go back to the Imperial Palace. She looked at the unconscious maid and understood. There she would at least be able to ask for help. The lady looked at her hand, with which she had touched the rose. The wound had opened again and blood had appeared on her fingers, and her clothes were wet. Sina felt warm. Strange, she clearly remembered how she lost consciousness. The lady opened her eyes and saw something like a bathroom. She was lying as if on a sofa.